And then sorted. In which case, um, have a good time. I'll be around to take any questions. I can jump in with questions, Simon and Dave, if that works for you. Usual
Yeah,
kind
that'd
of
be
thing.
good. Yeah, that'd be
Jump in,
good.
I'll put them in the chat and I can do that and ask the questions. But otherwise, over to you, Dave or Simon, whoever's going to kick off.
Yeah, it's going to be me to kick off. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Sorry to get you out of the sunshine and indoors, but I think we'll be looking forward to and hopefully a nice weekend of some sunshine on Saturday to keep us busy. So yes, so tonight's little subject is bird migration. It's something that when me and Simon were discussing what we were going to talk about, it was a question of what we can leave out as much as what we put in, because it's such a big topic. We're going to run through as our second session in the number of topics that we're covering. Migration is such a massive part of the avian world and such a massive topic, and particularly so as the map on the graphic on the left shows that the vast majority of the species that we see and hear in the UK are migrants of one sort or another. And one of the things that we'll do when we're going through the session tonight is to talk about different sorts of migration. We'll be talking about when it happens, why it happens, how it happens, how the birds do it. So we cover a number of different topics. As you know, we're recording the session, and the idea is that anybody wants to review it, they can revisit it later, and anybody who's missed it can also view it. As Nick said, if you've got any questions, and hopefully you will, because it's such a big topic, stick them into the chat, and one of the three of us will try and answer them as best we can. And then, as Nick said, we'll talk at a short time reviewing the weekend activity on our visit to Ivinghoe Beacon, when hopefully we will be seeing some migrants. Normally do this at the end of the session, but I thought I'd do it at the beginning of the session, just to cover off some of the reading and reference material that we use and that we've referred to, and also that you can use yourselves, as there's an awful lot of information online and also in old books. British Trust for Ornithology is well into bird migration. It's a great site to visit. Obviously, we use that to record our surveys, of which the majority of birds on those can be migrants of one sort or another. The RSPB, another wealth of information. And Cornell University. So these are the people that developed the Merlin app. But if you go on to their website, there is some fantastic information on migration, and they do these wonderful moving radar maps of migrants as they move up through North America by species and by groups, and it's fascinating to watch. So thoroughly recommend that as something to pick up on as you sort of look at what's happening this spring, and also what's happening in the autumn. The next three items, in fact, are quite old books. Gatke is a German. He went and settled on Heligoland, which at the time in the 19th century was part of Britain, although it's just off the coast of Germany and Denmark. Anyway, he settled there, spent 50 years observing birds, and some of the information contained in his very readable book introduced some new and still very valid topics on the subject of migration from that particular little island. Eagle Clark and Eric Sims, different approaches, but a lot of information covered in those books. You can probably find them from abebooks.co.uk or in a second-hand bookshop or something. And then obviously a quick plug for Bucks Bird Club. Hopefully you're members or considering becoming members. And there's a lot of information there about migrants as they pass through the county, and included in the annual bird report that is produced. So that's further reading and reference. Obviously, we've garnered a lot of information from the web in terms of pictures and facts and figures and stuff. So acknowledge everybody that may or knowingly or unknowingly may have contributed to the session tonight. So I'd have to say that bird migration is one of the natural wonders of the world. It's all around us. It doesn't matter where you go in the world, you will encounter migrant birds. Antarctica, emperor penguins, you go up to the Arctic Circle, and there are millions of birds that congregate on islands just around the Arctic Circle. All of those will move at different times of the year, and literally everywhere you go, there is some kind of migration happening. And where we are, we're at a real crossroads in the UK. So we'll discuss some of those different types of migration, and you can try and think about some of the species that you would normally see and how they fit into which sort of pattern of migration that they might be taking. So why do birds migrate? We'll cover that. We'll talk about the types of migration, what triggers the birds to start migrating, when do they migrate, how do they migrate, some of the dangers of migration, and then we'll pick up on UK migrants and other worldly migrants, and some of the feats that some of the birds actually achieve, which are quite remarkable. So why do birds migrate? So a lot of in the Europe and North America, a lot of it is historical and related to glacial retreat, and also as the climate change that occurred as the glacial retreat was happening. So birds started to move from their current breeding grounds and follow the food sources that were proliferating close to the glacial coverage, a bit like Scotland today, full of midges, full of food, high protein, lots of sunshine, ability to feed young for a considerable part of the day. So that was something that started, and birds migration started off as sort of short distance and then became middle distance, and now we're seeing very, very long distance migrations happening as the ice sheets have moved so far north and south. Obviously, weather has an impact on why birds migrate as well. Could be short term, could be short distance, or it could be middle distance. If a sudden cold snap occurs in the autumn, then some of the migrant thrushes and things that have visited the UK will continue to move south and west, and won't be staying around because there's no food for them. Food availability is obviously very key, especially if you're raising a family. If there's plenty of food, then obviously you can raise a larger family, or maybe more than one brood during the course of the summer period that you're breeding. Mates, birds migrate to find a mate. You'll see with some of the species that come through into the UK, certain species like ouzels, then wheatears, then the males or the females will come through first and establish a breeding territory, and then be joined by the opposite sex at a later stage. Competition, obviously, there's competition in if you take Africa and all the species in Africa and the vast density of birds that are there. There's a lot more competition for nesting sites, for food, for mates, and so on. Whereas if you migrate north or east or south, then you stand a much better chance of finding a mate, as there'll be less competition around you. So that's another reason for making these moves. Disease that can force birds to migrate from where they currently are to somewhere safer. And again, that's probably more likely to be sort of a shorter distance or a middle distance. There's some examples of that from the recent bird flu outbreak. Predators. If you take something like a gull colony, mink and other such predators rake through a colony of gulls, then the gulls will just give up and they'll just start a migration early in the season and give up, or they'll go and find somewhere else further away where there is no predators, and maybe if they have the chance, they'll start to breed again. And breeding success. Indeed, if you are in an area where you've migrated to that's got a high food availability, lots of sunshine during the day, long days, and then you've got the ability to increase the number of young that you produce per brood. And a lot of studies have been done on this, and species that remain in Africa, or examples of species that remain in Africa do have smaller brood sizes than those species that actually undertake a longer term migration north, and they have 50 to 100% higher brood sizes. So that's another reason for migration. Looking at the different types of migration, first of all, we'll start with the non-migrants, and those are the permanent residents. They can eat, sleep, and reproduce all in the same area. And some of those, if you think about those, then some of those would be robin, the house sparrow, and the dunnock that you see in your garden. But not necessarily things like the blackbird and the song thrush and some of the tits and some of the other birds that appear in your gardens, especially the finches. They might be short distance migrants, which are moving according to habitat or some kind of weather-related issue. And then there's other short distance migrants that are altitudinal. A lot of those occur in South America, on the Andes, and places in the Himalayas, places like that. But there's also altitudinal migrants in the UK. Ptarmigan can come down the mountainside if it's particularly cold on top, and grouse can also move further down the mountainside as well. Coastal short distance migrants. Example here might be kingfishers moving from river to coast, or from lake to coast if there's a cold snap inland and rivers and lakes are freezing up, then they'll undertake a short distance migration to get to the coast so they can carry on feeding. So there's a number of different approaches there, and as the maps show there, common blackbird. In the blackbirds you get in your garden are not necessarily the blackbirds that are there all year round. Our nice banana-beaked common blackbird that is here in the summer may well have moved a bit further sort of south in the winter and been replaced by continental blackbirds, which tend to be a darker bill, bit less obvious sometimes, and they may have come from Eastern Europe. So don't take anything for granted in terms of which blackbird that you happen to be feeding. Robins also move, and they will move southwest and south, and they tend to, the ones that we will see in the winter, if they are continental ones, tend to be a bit shyer than the ones that we would normally be feeding in the gardens all year round. And then the wheatear, we'll cover the wheatear again a bit later on, but obviously that is a long distance migrant, and will winter in Africa and breed in Europe and Scandinavia and Eastern Russia and so on. So medium distance migrants, these are medium distance and long distance, similar in type. It's just a question of how far those things move, and the robin is obviously one of those medium distance migrants, moving hundreds rather than thousands of kilometers. But the long distance migrants, I mean, there's myriad of them, and they can move thousands and thousands of kilometers if necessary, and we'll see some examples of that later on. The things of the long distance migrants, I mean, seabirds, raptors, geese, ducks, as well as our passerines. So, think about, when you, this time of year, if you go down to the south coast, you'll be able to see sea duck moving through, the terns will be arriving, gannets will be passing through, gulls will be passing through, as well as passerines coming in off the sea if you're lucky, and you might see a wheatear coming in off the sea, or another bird of some sort flying in off the sea and making it to land, which is always a lovely sight to see. So what are the triggers that birds need to migrate? A lot of it comes down to hormonal release in the brain, and these hormones are normally produced and triggered by day length and temperature. In the UK in particular, if you look at the 18-degree isotherm as it moves north, then that is where you'll see most of the warblers and spring migrants starting to appear, around how far that isotherm has managed to move north. But day length will certainly have a big impact. You can see it in terms of not necessarily migration, but within the 2 days of the shortest day in the winter, you'll hear the first thrushes start to sing. And again, that's been triggered by day length, irrespective of the temperature. But so that's sort of some of the normal factors that are part of a bird's physiology. But some of the abnormal factors that trigger birds to migrate. This is one that we've discussed, is in terms of breeding failure and disease, but also weather. So these are all key factors that can cause problems during migration and also trigger migration off. So how do birds migrate? Hang on a sec. Right. So we've got hormones, the day length and temperature. We've just discussed that. There's also a lot of physical changes that birds undergo in terms of the body fat that they have to put on to sustain them through a long flight. There's muscle definition that they have to improve the physiology that they have, so that they can also fly for many hours and sometimes days. And they can do this without any practice, without having done it before. Young birds will do it naturally, and they'll be ready to migrate as far as the adults do. So if they've got the physical side of things all sorted, how do they actually get from A to B? And there's a number of different factors that come into play. So long distance migrants, they'll use the magnetic field of the Earth. They'll use the position of the sun, and the position of the stars as well, for those nocturnal migrants, of which passerines form a great proportion. Once they're getting closer to where they are intending to get, then the olfactory elements will come into play in terms of smell and also sounds, from other birds calling from the ground, or even just the sounds of different types of habitat. You know, if the wind is rustling through a reed bed, it sounds very different from the wind rustling through a wood. And the same as a reed bed will smell differently to a wood as well. So these all these elements come into play. And then when you get to the near distance to where they're close to breeding, they will recognize landmarks that they learnt about in the previous autumn when they were bred, and then when they were exploring their local environment, and they can remember a lot of these landmarks around them, which is why swallows find it so easy to return to the same barn year after year, and swifts return to the same nest, and birds just return to the same area. And even in winter, you get gulls that are faithful to one part of a beach several thousand miles from where they were in the summer. So it's a fascinating element, and we don't fully understand, especially all of the long distance elements, how they all play a part. But it's just fascinating to think that a bird such as a cuckoo, that by the time it's left the nest, its parent will have left the country, and this cuckoo can find its way several thousand miles to its wintering grounds without any problems at all. Absolutely incredible. So passerines, as we say, mostly nocturnal. They tend to be a sort of what we call a broad front, but they'll move as a wave going across the land. They'll stop at before crossing wide areas of sea and feed up potentially, and then move again to make sure they've got enough fat to get across the sea. And as I say, mostly nocturnal, so they'll put down before dawn, feed voraciously for a few hours, and then rest up until the next evening, and then potentially move on. Non-passerines be diurnal and nocturnal. A lot of them tend to follow traditional routes, and a lot of them, especially the larger ones, will find the narrowest points to cross water bodies because they don't get the lift that they need. So we're talking about things like storks, herons, ibises, birds of prey, and so on, that they like to, if you like, they get to the narrowest point to cross a water body, and then if the thermals are there, they'll thermal up as high as they possibly can, and then let themselves just drift down across the water until they sort of hit the land on the other side of the strait, which could be Gibraltar or in Turkey or anywhere like that. So it really is, because it's for a large bird to flap across the sea takes up a huge amount of energy and can be very dangerous for them. As we say, so different wing shapes do dictate the different styles of migration. We've got a stork, we've got a tit, and we've got an albatross. And you can see the different shapes of the wings there, and we've got nice big wings for the stork, so it can thermal up into the air and travel hundreds of miles with virtually hardly a flap of the wing over suitable terrain and with suitable weather. We've got the albatross with the long, narrow wings, which it gets the lift off the sea, can soar up and then glide back down, soar up, glide back down, and will definitely move for hundreds of miles over the sea without flapping its wings at all. Then a passerine's wing, as you can see, it's shorter, it's more rounded, and it's a lot more effort involved in small passerines flying for hundreds or even thousands of miles. So the different wing shapes will help to dictate the migration style and the migration style will probably help to the evolution of the wing shape to suit. Simon, are you wanting to pick up from here?
I am good to go, Dave. I have stability in my internet. I'm ready to share as soon as you stop sharing, and it will be almost seamless.
There you go.
Look at that. Incredible. Right.
Almost prepared.
So much like we rehearsed. Right, okay. So following on from Dave now rushes off to get a beer. Yeah, it's great the questions are coming in as well. And the problem with Dave is he knows a lot. Okay, some of Dave's skill levels are in this space are incredible. He's had a long time, obviously, to get these skill levels. But as you can see, it's not just birds fly from one place to the other. Right, that's the very simple reason. So also, what you'll notice is previously Dave said around the different wing shapes that we had. So what you've got then is you've got different migrants, we call them short hop versus long hop, and this is to do with the lengths of their wings. So what you'll notice there, and when we talk about the length of their wings, what we're talking about is really the primary projection. Now, the primary projection, I can't quite see it. It's the bits of wing, the wingtips effectively, that go beyond the secondaries, which are the bits of wings up the top there. So what you can see here is you can see on the sedge warbler at the top and the reed warbler at the bottom, you can see that they've got quite long primaries, which means they can fly further distance than birds with short primaries. So next time you're out, or next time we're out on Saturday, we will show you the difference between what we call primary projection, which, as I say, is those longer wings. And what you've got from a short versus long hop is obviously the birds are when they're migrating, they have more stops. Okay, they're not going non-stop. They also don't take as long time to feed because they know that their next stop is only going to be across the channel, or it's going to be from an upland area to a lowland area. We're not talking Greenland wheat here at the moment, which we'll talk a bit about later. What dictates whether a bird is a short hop or a long hop migrant? Well, again, this is many hundreds of thousands of years of evolution has come into play here, whereby species feel that it's more preferable to undertake the dangers of migration, because we'll be talking about that in a minute. And in order to raise young, in order to arrive at the right sort of time, all of these things are, impact whether or not a bird is gonna fly long distances, or whether it's going to fly short distances as well. And what we'll see, hopefully, as you'll see from taken away from today, is the risk worth it? Why do the birds take these risks in the first place? And when we're talking about those adverse weather conditions, it's lovely at the moment, isn't it? It's brilliant blue sky, sun's out, all of these migrants, they've got, there's virtually no wind, all just chilling and relaxing. And, the migrations are easy, but they are fraught with a lot of danger, which we'll talk about. But some of you may have also heard on bird guides or on the rare bird alerts, is you've heard of these things called hoopoes. These southern migrants that typically in Spain have been ending up all over the south coast. And this is another sort of facet of migration that is certainly for me and Dave is very exciting. This is what brings the rarities. A little bit more so for me than Dave. I don't think Dave haired off after the College Lake to go and see a green warbler in Yorkshire. Dave's very much a more local twitcher. But like that top bird on the right hand, you know, the Eastern Crowned Warbler. I've seen 2 of those in the UK now, yeah, one in Yorkshire and one in Cleveland. But these are very, very sort of extra liminal species that are coming into the UK. And we're going to introduce 3 more terms to you. It's not enough that you've got to learn blackcaps and garden warbler songs, is it? No, we're going to introduce new terms to you as well. Nick, you've just come on the screen. Was there any reason? Oh no, that's fine. You've just appeared on my screen. I thought you were coming on to say something. I thought you were about to say you got a hoopoe in the garden. That'd be quite nice. By the way, everyone, please look out for hoopoes in your gardens. There are a lot of hoopoes. There was over 30 on the Isles of Scilly over the last couple of weeks as well. So what we're going to introduce you to overshoot, drift, and reverse migration. When we think about overshoot, this is it's fairly self-explanatory. So what this is that a bird has ended up further on its journey than it anticipated. You know, these hoopoes were sort of, you know, chilling around in northern Africa and thought, all I've got to do is I've just got to get to Barcelona. That's all. 2 days later, they're on the Isles of Scilly thinking, where did it all go wrong for me? And when we think about overshoots, what we're thinking about is think about a recipe. Okay, when you know, when there's a large area of high pressure lingering over the Mediterranean and it reaches the UK, you've got this I'm going to do sort of Michael Fish actions now. You've got this blast of warm air that basically means the birds just overshoot. They pass over there where they meant to land because they've got that lovely clear sky, warm temperatures, and they've got a light tailwind, and the extended journey actually becomes really easy. And what we're talking about here is birds ended up hundreds, if not thousands of miles from where they intended to be. And sometimes it's due to the inexperience of the birds being involved. We get quite a lot of the hoopoes can be aged, you know, so they're not as sun bleached as their parents, so they're in very fresh plumage, which means that actually they haven't spent a long time going backwards and forwards on their migration route. But also overshooting really does impact expansion of species as well. This isn't to say we're suddenly going to get breeding hoopoes, but actually the more birds that overshoot, the more opportunity for them staying into that space. You'll be pleased to know that the majority do actually go, oops, I've come too far, I better head back again. So all those hoopoes will probably just reorientate, migrate back into Central Europe or continental Europe, and then just head south again where the warmer weather is. Drift migration, right? This is a really good one for me. So this is where actually birds are blown off course by the wind. So it does happen a bit in the spring, you do get, but we typically associate this with the autumn. You've got the lovely wryneck there as well. Wrynecks are very much associated with that drift migrations, typically involved when strong, again, lots of inexperienced birds, they're less able to understand where they're going, and if suddenly mist or drizzle happens, then actually they can get blown off course and they land on the east coast. If anyone's worried about summer visitors at the moment, by the way, as you know, now I live on the east coast. I'm up in Lincolnshire. I've seen 4 swallows. That's literally all of the migrants that I have seen this year. They are really slow in coming into that east coast, primarily because we've had that really flush of southerly wind. So the south coast has been inundated. And what tends to happen is those birds migrate up through the middle of the country, which is why Bucks and Hertfordshire have had lots of little-winged plovers and lots of sand martins and lots of swallows, and we haven't yet because the right weather conditions haven't actually hit us. So when those birds from a drift migration hit the coast, we call that a fall, F-A-L-L, and that's when a lot of migrant birds turn up in one place. I am definitely looking forward to my autumn fall of very rare birds hitting my garden. And then the last one we want to talk about is reverse migration. So reverse does exactly what it says on the tin. I'm going here. Okay, imagine you're off to the shops and the shops are in a northerly direction and you head off in a southerly direction and in the pub. Ah, I did mean to go to the shop, but actually I've ended up in the pub. Now, if you think about this, when we're talking about birds migrating, it is literally 180 degrees. 180 degrees in the in the opposite direction. And then that migration pattern gets impacted, weather, navigational errors start coming in, typically with inexperienced birds. So what happens is the weather element, strong tailwinds push the birds off course, and then actually the headwinds of that wind suddenly puts them, and they've got no idea where they're going. The young birds then sort of maybe on a moonlit night, they can't see the moon, they can't navigate by the moon, and they just go off in a completely different direction. And then you think about actually this reverse migration is one of the key things why we have those really rare birds, such as that top right-hand corner, which is the eastern crown warbler. Although now looking at it now, I probably should get a steer from Dave here, because it could be Shanklin's leaf. But anyway, it's definitely from the Far East, all right? And what it was meant to be doing, it was probably the steppes in the steppes of China, and it meant to winter in southern India. And instead, it hasn't gone that way. It's gone, instead of going south, easterly, southwesterly a bit, it's gone northwesterly. It's gone in completely the opposite direction. It's probably traveled all the way across Europe, and then it's got to the last bastion of land, which in terms of the last eastern crown warbler, I've seen three. The last eastern crown warbler I saw was on Shetland. You can't imagine anywhere further north and west than Shetland, and that's how we get the vagrancy patterns: overshoot, drift, and reverse migration. Okay. Now, we spoke earlier about the dangers of migration. Why do they do it? Why do those swallows come all the way back to nest in your barn? Well, if you think about it, there's the UK summer is incredible, or used to be very incredible for insects, and it used to certainly a lot warmer, or a lot more temperate than some of the sort of African locations where these birds spend their winter. So they come back for the abundance of insects, and also pretty much where they were born as well. We think they've got that migration instinct within these birds. However, it takes a lot, and this is why we've seen, and Nick's heard me speak about this quite often when we're talking to cluster groups about the birds of conservation concern on the red and amber list. So we have lost 36 billion birds. Okay, put that into 36 billion birds since 1996 in Europe. Gone, wiped off. Before there was however many hundreds of billions, and now we've lost 36 billion of them. Okay, so species populations are down, individual birds are down. So we know that climate change has got a lot to do with that, but we also know that predators, 100 million birds a year are taken by domestic cats in the UK. Extrapolate that across Europe, and just with those two factors, we are starting to see an impact. We are also seeing still huge levels of hunting across Malta, across Cyprus, that is having a detrimental effect. But let's actually look at some of the more the more environmentally friendly threats that our bird species have to endure. The trusty peregrine, those sparrowhawks, anything that's predates these species as they migrate. I have had the very sad encounter on many occasions on Shetland, on the Isles of Scilly, and you just see this meadow pipit, and it's batting its way across the water, and it lands right on the shoreline. And then it's either immediately eaten by something. We've seen gulls go and grab a meadow pipit, or even worse, you see the wave coming in and just and engulfing the bird. So you've got that level of exhaustion and level of tiredness as well that goes into play. So it's really quite dangerous to migrate, and yet hundreds of thousands, millions of birds do it every year. I'll get on my hunting soapbox down there on the corner. I'm sure a lot of you will agree with me. Yeah, I don't like it. You know, it's obviously there's something lacking in individuals' lives, I think, if you want to shoot birds. But the belief that they're your birds, I think that's the thing that doesn't ring well with me. Is the turtle doves, the bee eaters, the golden orioles, all of these things that are shot as they travel over a country. You know, they're not that person's birds. They're not that country's birds. You know, our turtle doves are down 93% in the UK. Turtle doves frequently travel across Malta and Cyprus where they're blasted out of the sky in their hundreds. We can't ignore the fact that hunting has a huge impact on our birds. You know, birds that breed in the UK, that detrimental effect that they're having as well climbs down off the hunting soapbox there. Right. So, one of the things we wanted to put this into perspective was also migrants that migrate within the UK. So, as Dave said, it's not all about the big, fancy, long migrations, although we are going to talk about those in a moment. But it's also, shorter migrations that can happen. I think we spoke last week about the blackcaps that we've started singing earlier, and also the chiffchaffs. There's a few of you thinking, oh, you know, Cedric's come back. Cedric the chiffchaff, he's come back. He's now chiffchaffing away in my garden, and he's come all the way from Africa. Possibly not. He might have come from Boreham Wood. He could even have come from your local woods. The chiffchaffs and the blackcaps we have are now overwintering in greater numbers, and even the blackcap that you think is singing in your local parkland, that could be a Norwegian bird getting ready, traveling up from the south coast, stopping off for a couple of days, and then continuing on. So we have a lot of chiffchaffs now. Chiffchaffs, that top left-hand bird there. A lot of them overwinter in the UK. So they either just start singing where they are. Many of them don't even travel anymore. They just start, move back to their territory they've been in all winter, or they move, 20, 30, 40, 100 miles within the UK. You've got the bottom right there, the avocet. Now, the avocet basically just congregate towards the coast. A few of them do sort of disappear into the near continent, but the vast majority just sort of move out and get into clusters near the coast. If any of you have been down in Devon, gone on the ex-estuary cruises during the winter, big large flocks of avocets, and then as the warmer weather, they start to disperse around Devon, Cornwall, and start their breeding sort of process. So to put this into perspective, if you near Frampton, where I live, if you went down to the Wash, you'd see a sort of, quite a lot of avocets. You come back to the Frampton RSPB Reserve, there was like 7. On the river that's just back of my house, there was like, a single bird I saw all winter. And then in the last couple of weeks, suddenly Frampton's got 150 avocets back, and we've got like 15 or so that are up and down the river. So the avocets have sort of, just coming back in. The ones on the near continent, and when I say near continent, we're talking literally hop over to the Netherlands, feed over there, and then come back. It's not a particularly long journey for a bird that's used to traveling, backwards and forwards along its along rivers and streams to get down to the coastal areas. And it's this migration, this short hop migration that we were talking about, which is why we suddenly get avocets inland. They're coming down, they think they're going to hit the Frampton Reserve or Titchwell, and they just zoom straight past and end up at Willen Lake or College Lake as well. Then we've got the pied wagtails. Now, pied wagtails have got it all going on. They migrate south for the winter. So in the autumn, you get a lot of pied wagtails gathering, and as they migrate south. And you might think, okay, they do migrate. Some of them do migrate to the Med, but the vast majority of them, actually stay within the UK. So along the southern, certainly Cornwall, Dorset, quite large gatherings of pied wagtails. They do like merging onto that sort of. They like following the sun, going on holiday. And then we see the reverse of that during the spring as they start to move up. And if you go along to the local gravel pits now, mid-April, you'll start to see pied wagtails mingling with the yellow wagtails in large groups as they start to head north again. And then it wouldn't be a tracking the impact sort of webinar if I didn't put Nick's favorite bird in, the Seminole corn bunting. The corn bunting, they move around about 10 kilometers during the winter. They flock together and then they migrate back to their breeding grounds. I'm really fortunate up here in Lincolnshire. I was out last night walking the dog about 2-3 minutes from my house, had a short-eared owl which flew across the salt marsh, and it flushed the salt marsh roosting corn buntings, of which there are about 40. So absolutely fantastic to see those corn buntings. They will now start to disperse north and south of here to breed again around the Frampton area as well. So don't be, even within the UK perspectives, some of the birds you see will not be from around here. They've moved into the area, they've come across. But it's not just us, it's not just the UK and Europe. Apparently, there's a whole world out there of migrant birds. And what this depicts is the flyways, those areas within the regions and the ranges where most birds migrate to and from. So what you can see here is typically quite a lot of that northern Canadian species. They migrate down the eastern seaboard, ending up, in southern America. The western seaboard, those species that breed in arboreal forest in Alaska, they go down the western seaboard of the US, and again, they sort of on that western coast there, sort of Chile, I think it's Chile, and that down that sort of that left-hand side, and then you've got that big, massive warblers that come down and they funnel through New Orleans, go straight across the Caribbean, and they winter in that sort of central area of South America. And then we've got the Northern Europe and Greenland and Iceland. We're serviced from that west coast of Africa. But again, Northern Europe, when you start to see some of that northern species, that hardy species sitting up on the Arctic Circle, they've spent most of their sort of winter in equatorial Africa. And then you've got that sort of big swathe of migration across the Far East there as well. So we've talked about how, why, where, etc. And we've also talked about it from a UK perspective. But what we're going to talk about now are those extralimital migratory experts. Okay, so what have we got? All right, we're gonna do quizzes. Here we go. If anyone wants to put into the chat what you think that species might be. If anyone writes water ouzel, I think was it water ouzel, some water blackbird, something like that. That is the ring ouzel. A lovely male there with that grey scapuling on the wings. Right, one ring ouzel in particular was ringed at Beachy Head. That's on the south coast, and re-trapped in southern France 24 hours later. So I'm not too sure on just how far that distance is, but that's not bad for a blackbird-sized bird, is it really? 24 hours, and it's on a completely, complete back end of a different country. And then we have this little creature. What do you reckon? In the chat, come on, let's get your things working. What are they called? Thumbs. All right, what are we talking about here? Come on, what species is this one? It's also called the sea swallow. I'm seeing 0 people putting into the chat. You're just not playing along tonight, are you? There we go. Arctic tern. Right. And how incredible are the Arctic terns? Well, this incredible. Arctic terns travel 96,000 kilometers. Okay. 96,000 kilometers in 10 months. That's just incredible. I'm just doing a Google now because I should have done this earlier. I've got a feeling that Arctic terns are about 10 years. So I'm just trying to say, yeah. I know it's fascinating watching me type into Google. No, Arctic terns can live up to 30 years. So if anyone wants to do what is 30 times 96,000, that's a lot. Okay, that's a lot of mileage that the Arctic tern puts in, going from basically Northumberland down to the Antarctic there. Anyone? Come on. No. It's got, what's its tail? Come on. Yes, well done, Guy. Guy wins an imaginary Mars bar. Okay, it's a virtual Mars bar. Doesn't exist, but you won it. All right, that's the, there we go. Is that the male or the female bar-tailed godwit? How can you tell them apart? Well, it's orange, so it's a male. Female bar-tailed godwits are not orange, basically. They're exactly the same as the winter plumage look. So that's a male bar-tailed godwit. And that male bar-tailed godwit and the female bar-tailed godwits will travel 11,000 kilometers from Alaska to New Zealand non-stop. Non-stop. So when Dave spoke earlier about birds taking on fat reserves, the bar-tailed godwit, by the time it gets to New Zealand, is very, very slim. Okay, which is why when it gets there, you see these, thousands of bar-tailed godwits, huge feeding flocks, not really caring. You can walk up to them because actually they're so exhausted and emaciated that they actually they need to feed very heavily. Right. This little one here hasn't got a tail. Well, it has, but the island where it comes from, the cat hasn't got a tail. Any guesses? Come on. Isle of Man. Yeah, come on. That's the clues in the question. Who's going to win the virtual crunchy this time? Remember, you don't get this at all. That's it. Yes, there we go. It is a Manx shearwater. Okay, so don't give me all that. Oh, I can't be bothered to walk to the shops. All right, 8 million kilometers the Manx shearwater will travel in its lifetime, effortlessly, easy for me to say, effortlessly shearing across the oceans. We'll see more of the planet than any single human being could hope to in its lifetime. Right, this one's a bit of a tricky one, okay, because this is not a tricky, you should be able to get that one quite easy. We may even see that on Saturday. So, which species is that? Come on, chuck it in the chat. The old English name. Oh, spot on, Susie. There is a twist, okay, because it used to be called, the reason it was called wheatear is it used to be called white arse. Okay, because it's got a white rump. So it used to be called white arse, and that transformed into wheatear. What's so special about this one? It's got a peachy breast. It's bigger than our conventional wheatear. It breeds on an island, a huge island. One I think Trump's trying to buy at the moment, I think, and build a golf course on it. So that is indeed the Greenland wheatear. Okay, we start to see these coming through the UK in sort of early mid to late May. Because if you think about it, these are the ones with the longer wings, the bigger birds, and so they travel further. So you think about the wheatears that breed on Greenland still winter in Africa, whereas the wheatears that breed in northern France, also winter in Africa, but they've got a shorter journey. So these Greenland wheatears are pumped up, big, beefy wheatears. If anyone would like to see a Greenland wheatear, I suggest you make friends with Mike Wallen and go and Mike Wallen's the Bucks county recorder. He quite often has them on his fields in Rousham as they stop off on their migration north. So we do get quite a lot of Greenland wheatears stopping off. However, they can fly. You think about this bird. This bird is this. It's it's about 10 centimeters. The Greenland wheatear can fly directly across the Atlantic. So this is not only is it flying 1,600 miles non-stop, but it's doing it where there's no land. Now, of course, some of them can and do land on ships. It's a veritable ship crossing for the most part, but they have the capacity and the capability to be able to do that flight non-stop. We have seen them on the Ivanhoe Walk. We probably didn't see Greenland wheatear because the Ivanhoe walks that we do are typically in that early April, and the Greenland ones they're sunning themselves. They're getting ready. They're feeding up in Africa, ready for that big jaunt. So as I say, they sort of normally leave Africa mid to late April and hit our shores sort of 3 or 4 days later. And the last one, there we go. Any clues? I mean, you pretty much know what it is. You should do. They're normally covered in chocolate. But if not, what species of that particular bird is it? No, I can't see it. Oh, look at Sharon Harper. Sharon Harper has just won not only a virtual Mars bar, but a virtual selection pack of Mars bars. The Adelie penguins would have been even better if you'd put a little umla.
Virtual pack of penguins, Simon.
Exactly, a virtual pack of penguins. Do you know what, Dave? We should bring some penguins on Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll bring some penguins on Saturday.
And
Right.
the interesting element of all of this is, do you think that the penguins swim or walk that distance?
There we go.
Yeah.
There's a question for you. Sorry, I just had a group of brink geese fly over out of my window. Sorry about that. Yes. Do they swim or walk? There we go. Oh. Good. What's the consensus? Come on.
We've got one vote each.
There's quite a few. Yeah, come on.
2-2. 3-2.
Go on then, Dave. Put us out of our misery.
They walk.
Hey.
They don't fly. They don't swim. They walk that distance. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
They may have to swim a little bit because they use ice travel, so they use the sea ice. They do technically swim on the ice as well, but yeah, imagine that sort of distance. Now, Adelie penguins can live to be 20 years old. So that is 350,000 kilometers that an adult 20-year-old Adelie penguins can actually travel in their lifetime. Incredible. Right. Sorry, Dave, did you want to add something there?
No, sorry, I was just coughing.
Brilliant. So that brings us to the end of, I guess, the formal migration bit of the talk. It was a whistle-stop tour. You've nicked, I don't know, I can't remember, Dave, what we on? Are we on 100 years experience between us now? So horrible that. It's at least in the mid 90s. So we've done a lot of we've done a lot of stuff about migration, but we don't know it all. And that's the thing, is that, you know, even now we can learn new stuff. We can understand, and even now we're seeing different vagrancy patterns. Yellow-browed warblers, for instance, will probably breed here soon. For Dave and I in the early 90s, that would almost be unheard of, that those birds would actually be breeding, but they arrive here in large numbers every autumn, to allow us to look at them. So, where are we on Saturday now? As I put there, double trouble. You've got the Dave and Simon special. This was mainly, I think, my fault. I can't remember. Anyway, I couldn't do the date that I was originally going to be doing in April. So Dave and I have tag teamed this one. We will be going different routes. So when you get there, you've got the option. You can go in Dave or Simon's group. We'd like them to be pretty equal. You don't want all you just defecting onto Dave's group just because he knows a bit more about migration than me. But we're hoping that you know, we'll split into two groups. We want you to be there about 10 minutes earlier. We want to be ready to go at 6:30. I say ready to go, at least for my group. We hang around in the car park for 10 minutes. So if you are there 10 past, I will be there, and probably Dave will be there sort of probably about 1/4 past. We don't want to get too early, but we will have the emergency contact form for you to fill in. As we always say, always put an emergency contact, not your own number. We had that on a few occasions where people were putting their own mobile number down. If you fall over, all I'm doing is ringing you, and you're going to tell me you're in pain. So please make sure you put someone else's number down. If you don't have a significant person to put down, put Nick's number down. He's the person I'll be calling anyway, if you trip over one of the stiles, because he'll have to invoke the air ambulance, I'm sure, on your behalf. But we've never had an incident. We're incident free, 6 years. So everyone should just take a little bit of caution. It is rocky terrain, but we do take it very slowly, and we do try and look after you. Walking boots should be okay. The earth is quite compacted out there. It's quite cold. All right, it will be warming up, but there will be a wind chill. And the good news is that ring ouzel, that exact ring ouzel, arrived a couple of days ago. I think it's still there today. It won't be there on Saturday, that particular ring ouzel, I'm sure, but we hopefully will get a few more ring ouzels coming through. We're in that zone at the time when the ring ouzels are starting to come up from Africa. You've heard it now, push up through Africa. Long-winged, very long-winged, the ring ouzels. So one of our long-distance migrants as well. We meet here, which is this is Dave's rather eloquent drawing of the actual car park,
It's
which I
not mine.
think
It's not mine.
moved slightly.
I nicked it from last year's presentation.
Yeah, do
The
you know
car
what,
park
Dave?
is where the
Yeah,
car
I
park's in
think,
the wrong place.
yeah,
You've missed the car park.
yeah, I think
I think it's Nick's. I think that's Nick's old diagram.
yeah, do you know what? Do you know what I think as well is I might have moved it when I was mucking around with the slides, but even then it wasn't
I think you
over
did.
the car park. So if everyone could ignore going to that car park and go to the actual car park, we have dropped, Dave and I have dropped the Google map thingy malarkey into the skills websites. And yeah, so we will see you there no later than 6:30. Although if you are later than 6:30, and you know who you are, there's a few of you that suddenly turn up late, but fair play. So do I sometimes, but I'm normally early for these ones. We will be in the car park, or we won't be very far from the car park as well. And that is it. This was us last year. I think it was last year. See a few old hands there, Colin and Mariki and Adrian rather. Yeah, so hopefully see as many of you as possible on this Saturday. And I think that's it. We open the floor up for what would be hundreds of questions, I hope.
Thanks so much, Simon Dave. How you cover that subject in an hour? This is a whole thesis and a life study and beyond, isn't it, really? I've put a couple of bits in the chat if you want to find out more. Um, there's a European bird, it's called the European Bird Atlas, isn't it? I think in there, if you want to have a look at that, that blows your mind. I think they've looked at every ringing record of a bird and where it's gone and its distance and its migration routes. You can pick a species, any species, and it shows you these kind of real heat maps, if you like, of distance and angles coming back through the link in the chat there. That really puts everything in context about where birds go, what routes they take, and all of that comes from people like yourselves, other bird ringers out there, ringing birds, retrapping, and building this picture and this knowledge of how things are doing. So yeah, blow your mind. Have a look at that website. It's in the chat if you want to have a look through and understand a bit more. But it's really quite a visual kind of website to work stuff through. But anyway, questions? Anything from anyone? Anything to do with bird migration? While you're thinking of your questions, if you can get to the East Coast in the autumn, you get those days, don't you, Dave? So when you get these kind of just migration days when the winds conspire, you're in the right place at the right time, and you just get these kind of falls of birds that just drop in, particularly thrushes or starlings or anything coming off the East Coast in Norfolk, and they've flown all over overnight over sea, they're knackered. They just literally ditch on the beach, and you can see birds literally just coming in off the sea, flying straight over your head and carrying on in. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah.
Not necessarily rarities, common birds that you will see. Some will get grabbed by a gull, some will be chased by a raptor, some will just flop on the beach absolutely knackered and might not make it, but it's an amazing spectacle.
Yeah, no, it is. And even on the, as I say, on the south coast, which is where I spent a lot of my youth, it was in the spring. It's fantastic because you get the birds coming in off the sea. You're getting the seabirds, the ducks, the gulls, and so on, terns migrating up the coast, going around into the North Sea. And then in the autumn, you get them pitching up on the coast to feed up before they cross the channel going away. So it's you get a double whammy in that respect. So yeah, it doesn't matter where you go, migration is there somewhere.
Another birding phrase for your bluffing guide, in off is another phrase. Birds are coming in off the sea. Anything coming in off? Anything in off? Yeah. With your much abouts and in off. That's another one to add into your dictionary of phrases. There's a question in the chat, guys, from Helen. What will be likely to see on Saturday so we can do some research beforehand? So no pressure. We don't want a list, but
Well, I mean, what we think you should do is
key species to have a look at beforehand on Collins or wherever. What do you think?
yeah, well, we would advise you to go and review all of the YouTube videos that we've ever done, because I think we did one on on birds we were going to see, I don't know, about 4 years ago. So we will be looking for migrant species as part of this, because we've just talked about migration. So we're very hopeful ring ouzels might be there, wheatears might be there. We should hopefully have quite a few warblers in, blackcaps, chiffchaffs, hopefully a few willow warblers. We might be lucky with a few other oddities. Steps Hills had grasshopper warblers in the past. We might tree pipit. I think we got on our last walk.
Flycatcher last year.
Yes, yeah, we did. We had pied flycatcher. So, anything could drop in. It is one of the premier migration hotspots in Bucks. But we'll also see good numbers of meadow pipits, and we'll see good numbers of blue tits and great tits. Everything's in spring mode as well, so we should get a really good audible impact as we go through, especially the woods around steps. Anything else, Dave?
And skylarks and maybe even Nick's bird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't forget swallows. Or you hearing Diane's house Martin swallows could easily be coming through. Possibly zero.
I haven't even seen a swallow yet.
Mm.
Well, it's probably because I haven't been out.
But you got to leave the house. Yeah.
But when birds mate for life,
Yeah.
if one of the partners dies, in terms of when they're returning from migration, how long does that the surviving partner wait until gives up the ghost of the non-returning monogamous partner? Does it
I'll
wait
let
until the next season to migrate?
I'll let Simon answer that one.
Well, I was just what a fascinating
It's,
question.
Yeah.
it's an impossible question to answer, Colin, really.
Yeah.
It's I imagine
Would it skip that breeding year and then wait until the next year?
No,
no,
probably.
no, it'll be they will get over it very quickly. If you think about the animalistic world, you know, the procreation of the species, the furtherance of the species is the most important. You know, if you'd hope that birds grieve, but realistically, if the Brent goose flew back with, you know, Dave Brent, Mr. Brent flew back, and they come and they weren't here. Oh, there's another one over there. So that cycle would continue. Yeah, there might be a little bit of pining and a little bit sadness potentially, but no, I think they'd get over it quite quickly because
Don't waste the season then, Simon. There.
Well, yeah, but also it'll depend because I mean you're talking about the larger birds primarily. So like if it was one of the Otmore cranes, for example, there are no other ones around, so it wouldn't be able to breed straight away probably. So it does depend on the concentration of the species as well as are there any other partners available?
Yeah.
And is it still early enough in the season for them to actually mate successfully and raise something?
We've had
It will, yeah, there's a whole bunch of factors involved in there. Swans will be the same as well.
Yeah,
I think we
I've just Googled it as well. Always good to Google stuff in the background while you're looking. And you see, most birds remate often within a few weeks. Particularly the female birds. See, they just don't hang around. But the male birds are, you know, a little bit further. As Dave said, they might skip a month and especially if there's no others, then they sort of, I mean, there's Siberian crane, isn't it? One of the Siberian crane has been forlornly coming back to the same area, but you know, there's only a few left in the world, and he's not going to find a mate, unfortunately.
I think they showed one of the ospreys, Simon, who basically the male was late returning. I think then she started to mate with another one, and then a matter of weeks later, the original male turned up and so shoot off the new suitor.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had barn owl records where the same where a female and a male early season checks go back late in the season with a second brood and there's been a different male. So whether that first male's died, perished, been kicked off, or been bit, yeah, I think the pressure to mate is probably
It's the overwhelming.
overwhelming thing. But it will vary so much by species as well.
Mm.
We probably need to go through every species and describe their individual answer to that question. But yeah. Did we do a good job of waffling around answering your question, Colin, without actually answering?
A satisfied customer, going Nick, you know.
Speak like you know what you're talking about for long enough. Yeah. Brilliant. Any other questions before I leave you to
there
your
was a
final
question.
word?
There was a question earlier, and I didn't really know the answer. I mean, I'm sure Dave would have, but I have just found a infographic. This was the one about, do Australian migrants just go north? Well, the answer is a little bit of yes, actually. So this is the red one's the East Australasian flyway. The main problem that birds have got with Antarctica is it's huge. So the Antarctica region, even though birds will fly over the top of things, for the most part, they will just keep to the oceans that they're used to. As I think there's a song in there somewhere. But yes, they tend not to migrate directly over Antarctica, and in some cases directly over the Arctic as well. They will try and skirt around them wherever possible. So yeah, what a great question.
Yeah, and that's those that do migrate. I was doing a bit of research yesterday, and I think it's about just under 50%, about 45% of Australian birds are non-migratory. So it's a far higher percentage than, say, the UK or Europe. because it's such a big island that they don't need to necessarily go further north.
So last year, when wasn't the Gulf Stream moving around, would that influence the success of, well, the struggle the birds had to get here? I think, didn't it shift? And that's why we had all that wet weather.
You do get, I mean, you maybe not quite your question, Susie, on that, but you do get the wind directions, and where the wind falls does influence what happens in certain areas. So you'll get, so I know when my son's up on Fair Isle last year, they had a big fall of redback shrikes at a certain time. Not necessarily, wouldn't necessarily get that many numbers, but you can, if the wind's slightly to the north or to the south, depends where the wind, what landfall the birds where they'll use and where they'll land. So that does have a big influence on certain things. I guess you talked about drift, didn't you, Simon, and wind patterns and things, and maybe subtle changes in wind patterns will mean that different birds some years will landfall here instead of here, and following the general direction. But there are subtle changes that make a big difference.
Just to answer Deborah's question there as well about the 3 or 4 swallows. 4 swallows I've seen, 3 over the garden. One of those was on its own. One was 2 birds together, and then the 4th bird was a single that was right near its nesting barn. Birds can go en masse, or they can just travel on their own. They tend to go in waves, so you might get, especially if there's bad weather, they might all clump up again on a coastal area, and then as soon as the weather lifts, boom, they all go. You saw some pictures earlier of like the kettles of eagles and birds of prey. That was over the Straits of Gibraltar, where lots of birds, and then they move. But think about it, they're all on their own individual journey. They're all trying to get back, for the most part, certainly the swallows, to where they were born. Sometimes they don't make it, sometimes they find somewhere else on the way, but for the most part, the swallows that were last year or coming back this year were either the previous returning adults or the young of the returning adults. So yeah, you know, if you're when they hit Boston, turn right, you know, come down to ours, or some of the ones in Lincoln will turn left, head up towards Lincoln. So yeah, the swallows do travel on their own. A lot of migrants do once they get to near where they need to be.
Yeah. All you needed to know about migration in 60 minutes, a little bit more than 60 minutes. Brilliant. We'll go and find it for real on Saturday. When you see it real, and you see a bird, yes, but you appreciate that bird is on its way to somewhere. It makes much more sense when in the field. So hope you've enjoyed this evening. Enjoy Saturday. Enjoy the coffee or the ice cream in the car park afterwards if the van still turns up. I'm not sure if it's still there in the car park there, but it was good for a brew after. I look forward to seeing you get on. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll let you know when I've worked out the YouTube channel, which is yes.
No problem. Well, I'm staying in Berkhamsted tomorrow, so tomorrow night. So I'll see you bright and early on Saturday morning.
That's good. Have fun, everyone. Yeah, enjoy your session. Cheers all.
See you Saturday.
Bye.
Cheers.